As soon as I clicked record, I realized that there is an objectively correct place to start this video. Hello. For the most part, this patch has been pleasant surprise after pleasant surprise for me, and perhaps the most pleasant surprise of all was Venti. So I've already talked about Venti a good amount in my last video, the Durin one, where he took up the largest section of it. And while I wasn't planning on making a Venti video, that's why that section of the video was so long, I've been playing him enough and I've been enjoying him enough that I think he deserves it. Because I've been hearing a lot about how Venti is a DPS. And yes, it's true, he does a significant amount of talent damage now. But through my experience playing him, I've found him to do a lot more than just DPS. But before we get further into this, I would like to introduce the channel's very first sponsor. Hello? LD Shop is a top-up website that uses regional pricing to get you discounts on all your Genesis crystals. And while I don't want to encourage excessive spending, if you're a player who is already spending money, already topping up, you should be doing it through LD Shop. You're getting all the same crystals, but you're spending less. Using LD Shop, you can get up to 30% off your Genesis bundles, and by registering using the link in the description and the pinned comment, you'll get coupons to save 15 and 5%. You don't need any sort of account information. All you need is your server and your UID. And you know what? My Welkin is about to run out, so let's actually refresh that. And after verifying the payment, back to the game. Only takes a few seconds and there you are. And if you spend a total of $80 in 1 month, on the homepage, you'll be able to claim a free pass to any of these 4 games of your choosing. Which, yeah, self-report, I already got it. So thank you so much to LD Shop for sponsoring this video. Let's get to venting. So this video, it's a little difficult to find a place to start because Venti is somewhat reliant on Durin. I guess we should quickly run over his talents and put him on artifacts, maybe. Base Venti is really not all that impressive. There's a reason why I never made a video about him even after getting him. He groups. He groups, that's it, he groups, that's all he does. His skill generates energy and his burst groups. He shoots a big black hole, and then it groups. So what do the hex and circle things do to make him less of a one-note character? Well, first of all, they just give him damage. That is the main thing that a lot of people focused on. He gets a significant talent damage profile. His normal attacks now become infused and get increased scaling while his burst is active. His skill already had a pretty decent multiplier attached to it, but now that the rest of his kit is actually building for damaging stats, that number actually matters and can be pretty sizable. His burst is another similar situation where the damage over time damage actually doesn't look very high, but it does tick extremely fast, and it also gets a straight up multiplier increase of 35% from this hex and circle passive. So it was already dealing a decent amount of damage, and now it's dealing 35% more, and also something that I accidentally skipped over with the normals, but hitting normal attacks extends the duration of his burst up to 2 seconds from an initial 8, which is a 25% duration increase and therefore a 25% damage buff. Finally, he grants a 50% damage bonus buff to himself when triggering swirls, and this all adds up and makes it so that Venti actually deals a significant amount of damage if you set him up for it. I'll talk about this specific team in a second, but for now, let's just see some Venti damage. And I actually, you know what, I won't do any cancels here. Not gonna do any silly, funny, fancy cancels. Just gonna do raw normal attack spamming. And we can see some pretty decent numbers going on. Each hit isn't really doing that much, around 20,000 damage, but Venti hits a lot. They really add up. But that's not all he can do. While his kit design does push you towards on-fielding him, making him into the damage dealer on the team, it has enough flexibility that he has supportive utility. This is what I was talking about in the Durin video, where this damage bonus buff that I talked about before, when Venti triggers a swirl, he gets a 50% damage bonus buff. It is not locked to Venti. It is any character triggering a swirl while his burst is active. They do have to be on-field though. Make sure they're on-field. So when you combine that with Durin's Res Shred, they give each other Hex and Circle, they power each other up. These two make a strong supportive sub-DPS combo for Animo units. Okay, I don't really think I knew what I wanted this video to be when I sat down, so we're re-recording. But let's pick up where I left off talking about durin, because durin is not strictly necessary for Venti. Nowhere near it. All Venti needs is another Hexen Circle unit to activate his buffs, and we have a decent set of Hexen off-fielders that can all pretty strongly benefit him and slot into his teams quite well. But durin provides the things that are most synergistic with Venti's kit, the things that Venti can trigger the easiest that allow him to deal the most damage, and if he wants to, pass his buffs off to another unit. He's another Hexen unit and fills that requirement. He's a res shredder. He's an off-field damage dealer who applies and gets an absorption on Venti's burst. He does a lot for Venti's damage, but I think more importantly, he does a lot for Venti's flexibility. Venti is an Animo damage dealing character, and used as a support, he supports other Animo units because he requires that you trigger a swirl. So no matter who's actually dealing the damage on field, you probably will want an Animo buffer in Venti teams, and that is either gonna be durin or it's gonna be Farazan. Now, I still like Farazan in Venti teams. She's still good in Venti teams. These characters aren't mutually exclusive. You can play them together. But you do really, really want one or the other, and durin leaves for a lot more flexible teams than Farazan does. His element and his application lead to him setting up a lot of other stuff. Of course, he counts as the Hexen unit, so with Farazan, you need to consider using another Hexen unit in the team to get Venti's kit online, whereas durin just is the Hexen unit. It's a lot of stuff. I don't think durin is strictly necessary. I mean, I should say, I don't even think either of these are strictly necessary. You can make a fine Venti team without either of them, but it will be just that. Fine. Durin kind of weighed down the original recording of this video because I had a really hard time thinking of fun and interesting Venti teams without durin, because I think he provides so many of the fun and interesting context for Venti. So I ended up just making like a normal Animo DPS video, which is not the video that I wanted to make, because I think he is a far more interesting character than that. It's just that he kind of does need durin to evolve into a far more interesting character than that. Now, I think it's time to pull the focus back to Venti because we're not nearly done talking about this guy. First, I shouldn't have skipped it over, but I did. He has two more things in his talents that I think are really impactful for supportive Venti. Number one is this energy generation. At the end of his burst, he gives 15 energy to himself and any party members who have the same element as whatever element he absorbed. Now, this isn't great. It's limited to swirlable elements. It can be affected by his absorption priority, and absorptions are just finicky in general, so it can be difficult to get one reliable element unless you're playing a team that only has one swirlable element. But if you can make use of it, 15 energy is a lot of energy. 15 energy to potentially multiple units is kinda crazy. It significantly lowers both durin and Bennett's energy needs in a team like this, to the point where I don't even use Bennett's skill. My regular rotation is actually this. I figured out a rotation where I don't need to skill on either Farazan or Bennett. Venti's third skill comes off cooldown basically at the end of your rotation as all your buffs are expiring, so you can use that third E to battery Farazan, and then you can use durin to battery Bennett, and then with Venti's funny little passive. Well, I messed up the timing and I didn't get my second skill. But Bennett, yep, energy needs completely met, no skill. So that's number one. It's a really nice extra supportive utility, not enough to use Venti just for this, obviously because no one used Venti before this. But when this is one extra thing stapled to the end of a long list of things that Venti can do for your teams, it actually starts to look pretty good. Second is going back to his burst. I think it's kind of obvious at this point that Hoyo is pretty done making off-field damaging abilities that snapshot. Durin's burst doesn't snapshot, Yehoda's skill and burst don't snapshot, Lauma's E doesn't snapshot, and Nefa's E doesn't snapshot except for the shield part of it, but the damage doesn't snapshot. I have to mention that Aino doesn't snapshot or the comments will think that I forgot her. In general, this just seems to be a design choice that Hoyo is moving away from. But if an ability already snapshots, It's not like they're gonna take it out. Yeah, Venti's burst damage snapshots upon creation. Previously, that was just kind of a fun fact because the multipliers weren't that big. But now that they're 35% larger and the burst lasts an extra 25% longer, Venti burst is actually dealing a decent amount of damage now. And while this isn't like a Xiangling situation where almost all of her damage is coming from her Pyronado, a solid percent is still coming from his burst, around 40%. So Venti's burst could always snapshot, but now that it's actually doing meaningful talent damage, that can matter. Venti and Durin already make up the backbone for an Animo DPS, so throw in Bennett. Now you have a big attack buff that you can snapshot with Venti that you can still utilize with your Animo unit. And I'm still getting ticks for 6,000 damage pretty rapidly. And I'm not even on a crown burst. I plan to invest a little bit more into Venti's talents. I'm going for a double crown because with enough investment, he can become a damage dealing, buffing, and grouping off-fielder for any other Animo unit. Oh my god, I'm becoming a skilled content creator. I have an actual segue from the talent section. I just mentioned that Venti has a pretty wide damage profile. He only gets about 50% of his damage from his normals, while getting the rest from a combination of skills and bursts. Now, I've seen a lot of people talk about Rust Venti, but because his damage profile is so widely spread, Rust actually isn't a very good option for him. It's about as good as Stringless. I mean, look at his new Sig. It gives normal attack damage bonus, elemental skill damage bonus, and elemental burst damage bonus. You want to look for weapons and artifacts that buff generic stats that all of Venti's damage sources can use. For that reason, you're probably going to have a better time with either Song of Stillness or Chainbreaker, craftable bows that give generic stats under conditions. Chainbreaker gives attack based on your team composition. Song of Stillness gives damage bonus if you get healed. These stats benefit all of Venti's damage sources, so they're going to be better than things like Rust or Stringless, which only benefit a part of his damage. Again, artifacts, you want sets that can give generic stats. Right now, that's mostly generic sets enabled by another character being on the team. Night Sky's Unveiling if you have 2 Nod Cry units, Reverie if you have Burning going on, Marechaussee if you have Farina. If you can enable any of these sets, they become pretty good, but don't specifically farm any for him because he has an artifact set coming out. Sorry. Next patch, we have a Hexen set that gives a ton of attacking crit rate. All it asks is that you be a Hexen unit, and Venti is a Hexen unit, so he can use it generically. But clicking out has given away my secret agenda that I was trying to hide. Yeah, VV is still really, really good. Its effects are still beneficial for Venti's own damage. The 2-piece is an Animo damage bonus, and the 4-piece gives a little bit of a swirl damage increase. That's not terrible, but it is also hands down the best supportive set in the game. Running him on field basically guarantees that you will have res shredded for any damage dealing off-fielders that you have in the team, which when Venti's best support is a damage dealing off-fielder, shredding res for them can kind of be relevant, but it also still holds value as a supportive set when you're off-fielding Venti. And of course, often you're still running Durin as a unit in those supportive Venti teams, and VV will still affect him. I have a few more things to talk about with gameplay and team building, but when it comes to what I can read here, what's in his actual kit, that's kind of it. Venti was designed to be an on-fielder. He gets the most value as an on-fielder, but him and his quote-unquote dedicated support work in such a way that you can do that and it will be good, or you can just pass all the buffs onto another unit and use Venti as a supportive damage dealing off-fielder, which if you couldn't tell, I tend to like those. And the reason why I am such a big fan of Venti in particular is that he is one of the rare few designs to do so as an on-fielder. He is primarily designed to be an on-fielder. He is meant to receive all his own buffs, but he doesn't have to. You can use his buffs to support another unit. Now, to my knowledge, they've only really tried this design once before, and I wasn't the biggest fan. It's mostly because I think Mawika dips far too much into the damage side of things. I really just wish she had more supportive utility in her kit, because as an off-fielder, she's mostly comfort. It's pyro application that isn't attached to any sort of burst or energy needs, and then that's kind of it. She has a 40% damage bonus buff after her burst. She can equip an artifact set that gives 40% more damage bonus, but she's mostly the pyro and the damage. Venti is a far more restrictive unit than Mawika, and he also doesn't deal nearly as much damage, but he has far more supportive utility, which is just what I look for in a character. I like units with a wide variety of use cases and potential functions within a team, and Venti with these buffs has just gained a ton. So I guess maybe let's talk about really the one gameplay thing that I have to talk about. It's Venti combos. I should start off by saying Venti combos are not the most important thing in the world. As I mentioned, your talent damage is pretty split, so perfecting your normal attack combos isn't going to affect your DPS nearly as much as a unit who gets all of their damage from their normal attacks. Like Hu Tao charge cancels. Venti has other sources of damage in his kit, has other sources of damage in his team, so if you don't want to do cancels, don't feel pressured. If you do want to do cancels, it's relatively easy. It's simply 2 normal attacks into an aim cancel, which for some reason I didn't explain what it means, but essentially you're quickly entering and exiting aim shot mode, which on keyboard you can do that by pressing R. So the cancel is 2 normal attacks and then press R twice. And to note, his first normal attack hits twice, so you want to cancel after the 3rd hit. This is the combo that gets out the highest DPS. But the double tap R cancels, I know, can be a little hard. God, I'm like messing them up now as I'm trying to do them while talking. These are the fastest way to do his cancels, but they can be a little bit tricky to do, especially on keyboard, because they require you to press R, your aim button, to aim in and then out. An easier input to do a charge cancel with is simply to do 2 normal attacks into a short hold charge attack, which is much more forgiving on your timing and your fingers, but also is a lower DPS combo. Another short tip about cancels. The reason you cancel after his 2nd normal attack is the 3rd normal attack does take a bit of time to come out, but his 4th and 5th normal attacks are also pretty fast, so if you mess up your cancels and you do your 3rd normal attack, I tend to just go through with the combo until his 5th normal attack, because his final 6th hit is very slow, and in general, I just would avoid doing it. So after the combos, I think I have one more gameplay thing, which really this is just a mention, but this can heavily affect Venti's team building and potential options for rotations. On-field Venti's playstyle, let's just swap to Farazan for a second, do a little Farazan on-fielding. It's entirely quick swap friendly. He doesn't lose his infusion after swapping out. As long as his burst is active, he's infused. Its short duration only makes it so useful, but this potentially can be a very interesting thing, especially with Venti being a VV unit. And unfortunately for this team section, because I don't want to do a ton of the same Animo DPSing stuff that I've done in the past, just with Venti this time. Now, I don't really have a ton of teams that I want to talk about because of Venti's limitations and the fact that I've made a ton of Animo DPSing videos in the past, and you can probably just watch those and cut out whatever unit is in the video and replace him with Venti and he'll do fine. So instead, I might just kind of go over some units that I've found a lot of fun using with Venti. Of course, I've already mentioned Durin. Durin's in like 90% of my Venti teams, but the one thing that I really should talk about with Durin, I didn't talk about it in his own video, and I think it was maybe more important to talk about it there, but this is very, very impactful for Venti, is that you need to be triggering pyro reactions with Durin to get any res shred, which can often make it very difficult to put Farina into Venti teams. Farina overtakes Durin's pyro aura very easily and makes it a Hydra aura. Then Durin starts triggering vaporizes, which don't shred any res. Venti starts triggering Hydro swirls, which don't shred any res. Basically, just be mindful of Durin in this team. He still has restrictions. He still has conditions for his buffs to be activated. He's not a free unit. You don't automatically get the res shred if you put him in the team, unlike some people I know. Your team building will be affected by your need to trigger a pyro swirl to get Animo res shredded. For that reason, I really, really, really love Emily in these teams. Not just because she's Emily, but like Airfryer is a real thing now. This is a team where you want to keep a pyro aura, you want to be getting constant pyro swirls so you can keep that res shred up, and Emily can do a lot of damage while helping to maintain that aura. She also is one of those units that activates those generically good sets that Venti can use. She makes Reverie a fairly strong option on him or on whatever Animo unit you might want to throw in this slot. When it comes to other Hexen units, I've really enjoyed using Mona. I am always trying to do something with Mona's stinky doo-doo garbage Hydra application. I'm always trying to get an absorption and use that absorption to do something. And Venti Lunar Charge is like one of the few contexts where that actually makes sense. The absorption can be finicky because it's an absorption and that's what they do. That's kind of their thing. But if you can get it to work with you, then Mona provides a pretty nice conjunction of things for this team, where she is a strong Hexen Circle buffer that is able to benefit Venti's damage, while also providing the Hydro for Venti to absorb. She's providing some meaningful buffs to Enefa through her constellations. This is just kind of a cool, funky team that works a little bit better than I expected, and I know I do a Lunar Charged team with all my Animo DPSs, but this is different. It actually is playing upon the interaction between Venti and Mona, who can enable and buff each other to make a pretty functional team. Fine, you know what? Fine. I'll do it. I'll do the rotation. I got my... Gosh dang it. Oh, come on. I have had an unacceptable amount of difficulties trying to get this Hydro absorption. I don't know, hold on, let me see if I can, there we go. It's, the Hydro absorption is very, very odd because you kind of have to be careful to not swirl what little Hydro Mona has off the enemy. So it's a little awkward in the fact that you kind of just have to burst and wait until the Hydro absorption has it, and that's how you get it consistently. But there is a way to get it consistently, and the team certainly isn't bad by any means. I messed around a little bit with Fischl and Aggravate, and I couldn't really find anything satisfying because of how much of Venti's damage is Animo damage. Very little of it is absorbed, so he wasn't really triggering many Aggravates. I'd rather leave the conversion stuff to units like Lanyan or Yehoda. Venti's absorption is more useful for the application and the potential swirls that it can bring, not its damage. Outside of Aggravate, Fischl is just a solid support. She's a DPS, she's a buffer. The thing about both Mona and Fischl really is that just like Farina, if you're relying on Durin to get your Animo res shred, then Fischl and Mona can gunk up the process and make it more difficult for you to get a Pyro Swirl and get your Animo res shred, which is why in my last team I was running Faruzan. Her Animo res shred happens automatically, no matter what. As long as enemies are near her burst, they'll get their res shredded. Yes, Durin can potentially shred Animo res, but in a team like this, he's never going to. And that's where Faruzan lies. I guess it's appropriate that I finish off the video talking about her, because overall, she is less synergistic with Venti than Durin is. Durin gives Venti a lot of good damaging stats and a lot of setup to deal good damage, but it's not always possible to get his buffs. Meanwhile, Faruzan doesn't really bring that much to the table. All she does is make Venti himself deal more damage. But unlike Durin, she doesn't have any conditions. You can run her wherever, whenever. You don't have to consider reactions, setups at all. She will always make Venti deal more damage. And of course, you don't have to pit two queens against each other.
I'll be right behind you.
Just use them together. Thank you to Dorsalfin from twitch.tv/dorsalfin1, Najodo, Rumpaltuz, Pegby, Dotiz, Do, ZaxCDR, Mudkip1727, Beef Potato, Roberto Desu, Big Soup, Buffalo Milk, DB, Bab, AZ Bite, Pyre's Flower, TSI Amat, Starnova, Tede Rose, and Aqua. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. I said everybody's name this time, I promise. I missed two people in the last video, but I said everybody. Thank you so much for your continued support. It means the world to me. And of course, thank you to LD Shop for sponsoring today's video. Hope you learned something. Have a lovely day.